All right. Hello, everybody. Hopefully we have some people who have joined us tonight for our EdTech Team Online um, little hangout on air about project-based learning. Hopefully you guys have had some time to get through some of the resources the first week to just understand what project-based learning is. I've seen tons of great posts onto Google Plus and some tweets going out, so really excited about what you guys are learning and sharing, and it will be great to hear from Kate and Lisa tonight. If you guys have questions during the Hangout that you didn't have a chance to post yet, go ahead and you can use our EdTech Team Online hashtag on Twitter to post your question, and we'll make sure that we're checking in on the hashtag and tell Kate and Lisa those questions that they can answer. You can also just post them in the Q&A on the, let's see if we have Q&A for the Hangout on Air as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. Tonight we have Kate Petty with us. Kate Petty works for the EdTech team now, but previously was in a high school and doing a lot of project-based learning with her students there, so she'll share her experience with upper level students. And then Lisa Highfill we have with us as well. Hi, Lisa. And she's going to be sharing about her experience with elementary students. I'll let them do a little bit more of an introduction about who they are and some of their past experience. And also you'll see we have Juan with us, and we also have Kyle Pace. Welcome, Kyle Pace. So thanks for joining us tonight, and let us know if you have any questions. So let's go ahead and get started. Kate, do you want to start?
Yep, I'll go ahead and start. My name is Kate Petty, and I taught secondary English, 12th grade mostly. When they gave me the 9th grade class, I promptly moved to the district office and became the tech coordinator for the school district. And since then, I'm now working with EdTech team for full time. I'm the director of certification programs. So anything that is involving certification, I generally have my hand in just a little bit. As Tracy mentioned, I did work with PBL quite a bit, and you'll notice that underneath my name is a URL. It's a Google short URL, and that's kind of the document that Lisa and I collaborated on. It's a very rudimentary, small document, but it does have some links that if you would like to just open a new tab and put in that URL, you are welcome to go in and take a look at as we go through. Just to give you a background on PBL for me, I learned a little bit about it, and then a couple of years ago I joined the pblu.org course, and I did the entire course. It took all summer long. In fact, I was on vacation in the middle of Utah, and I'd have to run to a hotel to be able to submit my assignment that night. But what it is it's a really fantastic program where each 2-week course is a part of, in sequence, a part of PBL. So you start with your driving question, and the very last course of, I think, the 8 or 9 classes you take, and they're 2 weeks each, is the final reflection on actually putting that classroom in, or that lesson into your class and working on it with your students. It was really a game changer and a life changer for me when I took that course. And if you want to go to pblu.org and scroll, they're not currently doing classes, but if you scroll down and put your email address into the email bar, you'll be able to sign up, or they'll email you when they do start classes again. But just sign up really quick because they go fast. Those PBLU courses go really fast. So I just thought, we looked at your questions that you filled out for Tracy, and we realized that really kind of what you'd like to know is what it looks like in the classroom. So both Lisa and I are going to go through, I'm going to go through what it looked like in my secondary classroom, and Lisa will go through what it looked like in her elementary classroom. And kind of give you the breakdown of the different components of PBL within the confines of my project. So what my project was, and you can actually get a whole host, and this was, I know, a question, is to see what different PBL projects are. And if you go to pblu.org and click Choose Project, you will see a whole host of projects there, and a lot of them are elementary. But just like me with a secondary teaching degree, I needed to obviously adapt that to make it for secondary. So I chose a Choose Your Own Adventure. And what I did ultimately was my students had their driving question, and at the end they had to create a Choose Your Own Adventure using Google Forms. And so I've linked to the website that I had collected. This was 3 years ago, goodness. Collected all of the Choose Your Own Adventures. Now, some of the links are broken because they were seniors and the accounts maybe have been deactivated at the school district, but a lot of them are still there, and you can go through their little adventures. Essentially, my driving question was, what makes a story sell? And that kind of brings us to that ungoogleable question, right? That kind of question where you think you have the perfect question, and then in 50 seconds, your students have all answered it because it turns out Google gave it to them without even having to open a link. So one of the biggest things that I tell teachers to help with ungoogleable questions is right here where it says solve, invent, and recreate. If they have to solve a problem that's unsolvable. For instance, my students had to read Heart of Darkness. And after they finished Heart of Darkness, rather than giving them multiple choice test, which would have been super fun and easy as an English teacher, I gave them this just diabolical essay question, and each group worked on it collaboratively. Each group had a different question and worked on it collaboratively. For instance, one group's question was solve the problem of malaria in Africa today, humanely, economically, and politically. So, I mean, that's impossible to solve, and maybe someday it will be solved, and maybe it's one of my students who will solve it, but right now that's an impossible question to solve. And that becomes an ungoogleable question. So something that hasn't been solved yet is fantastic. Inventing something is another thing, and this really goes towards, well, it goes towards K through 12. But when I was thinking about it, it actually my own 4th grade daughter was in an invention contest this last month, and she had to invent something that's never been invented. She's in the 4th grade, and not only did she have to invent something, but the requirements were she had to go to the patent office and make sure that nobody else had invented this themselves. So she had to do research on, has this already been invented, and if so, then what do I need to do? And the last thing is, this is really critical for the humanities teachers, because I kind of feel like the humanities teachers think that everything's been solved, and that's recreate. And so when you think about recreating something as an English or history teacher, choose a moment in history when, let's talk about maybe World War I. Choose a moment in World War I where if a different decision had been made, the war would have ended sooner. Choose a moment in, if you're an English teacher, a book, where if the character had made a different decision, things may have ended up better for that character. So recreating questions, those 3 things, if you have them do it, are non-Googleable questions. They can't Google them, they have to do research. And that kind of, so my driving question for my seniors were, what makes a story sell? And it comes up to a lot of issues, and that was another thing, is what happens, another question was, what happens when something is, the big thing about PBL is you don't know where it's going to lead. And for Lisa, I know that what she didn't know where it was going to lead was the end project. And she'll talk about that in just a second. But for me, where I didn't know where it was going to lead was the research. What makes a story sell? Well, what the bestseller was 3 years ago was 50 Shades of Grey. So I had, all these little 12th grade girls I didn't condone the 12 Shades of Grey or the 50 Shades of Grey, but they were reading that because that's what was selling, and they're trying to figure out what makes it sell. So there are some confines that you may want to, some lines you may want to talk about, especially with that, but you never know. Where it's going to surprise you is always going to surprise you. I would have never thought that the research part was going to be the part where I had no idea that they were going to use that. They used Harry Potter as well. They used, Percy Jackson. They used Hunger Games was out at the time too. So there were all these stories that were going around, and their job was, well, what makes people read these stories? And so then they had to take all of the information, the data they collected, and create their own story, choose your own adventure story, proving that they could sell this story because they knew what they were talking about. So when they were talking about what makes a story sell, I thought the KWL chart was the stupidest thing ever in teacher school. It was the stupidest thing ever, and I think a lot of teachers still do, but KWL absolutely makes sense in a PBL world. This is where the students talked about, well, let's talk about, without even doing research, why does Harry Potter sell? Why was Hunger Games so popular? And they talk about, relationships and things, and we list it all on the board. But that leads into, well, why do people need the relationships that are tumultuous? So we start talking about all these questions that now what we know needs to lead to, and that middle column, the what we need to know, those questions where they realize, okay, well, I know this, but why is it that way? That is their guiding research. And I know that a lot of questions on your Google form had to do with standards. And it doesn't matter if you're in Canada, in Australia, or in the US, or in any other country, your standards are going to have to do with research. And that is the foremost part of PBL, that is going to conform to your standards, but it's going to make it authentic and real in an amazing way. So during that W part, as they're doing their research, you start out small. You have them start doing some research the first week. And then the second week, I'm having them add a few more questions. The third week, I'm having them add sources. The fourth week, I'm teaching them how to cite those sources. And the fifth week, I'm teaching them to do a few more things. So when they're looking at the research, when you're teaching that research part of the PBL, you're teaching them all these amazing research things that are already in your content standards. So they go through, they researched everything, then they did feedback. So they did do their first iteration of their Choose Your Own Adventures, and realized that they didn't know what they were really. So I had to actually go to eBay, because they don't sell Choose Your Own Adventure anymore, and buy a set of Choose Your Own Adventures, and they understood what they were. And they started doing them, and then, my iterations, their iterations were really, oh, page 4 doesn't lead to page 4, it actually leads to page 7. So they had to go back and forth and fix their Google Forms back and forth. But for the most part, they did Fishbowl, and you can Google that to find out more about what a fishbowl is. They definitely, one group would share their Choose Your Own Adventure with another group, teacher and community. By the way, I did group projects with my PBLs. I did not do individual. I found that when you do group projects, there's a lot more invest into it. They want to help each other, and they want to make sure they do well for each other. The last thing was showcase, and one of the questions was, how do you work this for a global audience? And I think Lisa's going to talk about this as well. But the biggest thing is when you're first dabbling into PBL, just have them create a website. That's going to be your safest place. You can move on and get more creative along the way, but if this is your first time with PBL, have the groups create a website. For me, my groups always created teaching websites. So whether they were doing, solve the issues of malaria today or Choose Your Own Adventures, they were still putting it on a website that was very public and very real. So no matter if they're first graders or 12th graders, if they forget a period and it's out on the World Wide Web, they go crazy. They're coming scrambling back in saying, I need to fix this, I need to fix this. And for me, that website showcase was an amazing forum for them. What I was able to do with that website, if you went to my link there on the Choose Your Own Adventure, I just kept my own teacher portfolio. So you'll see that Choose Your Own Adventure leads to a website, and you'll see the different years that I had there and the different projects I did. And so when you click on the Choose Your Own Adventure projects, you see periods 5, 3, and 1, and then within periods 5, 3, and 1, you'll see all their projects. And I was able to share those projects with not just my students, but with their parents, and I shared that link with my administration. I shared that link with Twitter. I shared that link with Facebook. I shared that link with everybody, asking for feedback. And part of it, and I didn't make them keep that on their website, was getting feedback. Hey, now that you've done my Choose Your Own Adventure, can you give me some constructive criticism on how to make it better? So even their final draft was still a draft that they could go back later and keep doing. So that's kind of it for secondary, and that's kind of what I went through. Again, the Choose Your Own Adventure, I believe, was like a 3rd grade project on that pblu.org, and as a 12th grade teacher, I just changed it up to make sure that it was a great idea. I love the idea. I just needed to make it authentic for my 12th grade students. Tracy, was there anything that questions that anyone had?
Not at this time. Kate, thank you so much for sharing. I think that having that real world example and those details will definitely help people walk through their projects that they're creating right now. Make it a little bit easier for them to sort through exactly what it means. And I know that a lot of people were having questions about like where do they start, and I think that you gave them a good place that they can start and some other places that they can go and look for some lessons. So thanks, Kate, a ton, and we'll see if there are any other questions that pop up throughout. Just a
Tracy,
reminder
one,
to do that.
one
What?
more thing about the where do you start. Lisa and I were talking about that earlier. And I think the most important thing to think about when you're starting at the, even during the summer when you're thinking about, the school year, it's a four-letter word again with teaching programs, but backwards planning. So you've got to start with where you're ending and then just kind of plan backwards and just decide, okay, at what points are the main points of this, what points are the main parts of this project going to be due. Would you agree, Lisa?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, for sure.
All
Awesome.
right.
I forgot to mention to you guys all watching right now too that Kate and Lisa, they're both in Palm Springs right now for the Q conference. So thanks for taking some time out of your busy schedule there to come and share with us. So, all right, Lisa, I'll pass it off to you for some elementary advice.
Great. Nice to meet you all. I'm Lisa Highfill. For 20 years, I taught fifth grade in Pleasanton, California, and now I'm an instructional technology coach. And I really want to just run you through um, basically 3 years of project-based learning in my classroom really quickly. Kate, can you click through my links for me? Um,
Absolutely. Let me screen share for you. Hold on.
and actually, a lot of you can follow along too. I'm just going to go a little fast for her. It's the 3 links of the 3 projects. I'm going to start, Kate, with the outdoor ed.
Okay.
And if you are a fast clicker, you can just follow along here. And I have to say, in elementary school, I was I really wanted to teach them how to do a project. It wasn't about free for all, choose whatever you want. So we did a class project. So coming up with our class project was every year I just crossed my fingers. I'm like, oh, we got to come up with a good project this year. And I would just wait and watch and observe my class and what interests were they picking up, or what is it that would just took hold that had some meat to it. We would try some projects and see if it would go, and we'd learn a little, and then it would fizzle out. Well, then our outdoor ed trip almost got canceled, and so we had to create this. We decided to create a persuasive website about why kids should do outdoor science camp, and it became quite the complex website. Kate, if you can click on content learning. We wanted to show them that we weren't just going on a vacation for a few days. And so they went through all of this study, and we focused a lot on this invasive plants. And come to find out, the coast of California is covered in ice plant, which is invasive and it's ruining the coast, whatever. And they did a huge study and a 2020 investigate, and we Skyped with scientists, and we tried everything, every multimedia project we could do. Well, one thing just led to another. People ask me all the time, well, how do you plan this unit ahead of time? I said, I didn't. Oh my gosh, we just got so into this invasive plant topic. Well, from there, I had been talking with a friend of mine who teaches in Hawaii. And Kate, if you can go back to the homepage and to collaboration. Is that beautiful school there, that collaboration piece. And my friends teach at the Hawaii Preparatory Academy in Waimea, and they have a terrible invasive species also. And their students are called Restoration Generation because they're fighting so much against invasive species. So we started to do this great collaboration between students that I never expected to happen. I couldn't have planned for it to happen if I wanted to. Kate, if you can go back to the beginning of homepage. This project went on, and we were, the most important part of this, the kids were really empowered we actually went to the outdoor ed. We didn't get canceled. We were still going to present to the school board. They want to make a point that their voices should be heard, and they worked so hard on this. Well, in the meantime, they were going to close the state park we were going to, which was Pigeon Point Lighthouse. And so they just were so empowered. They're like, we need to send our website to the state. And really, to me, that is the absolute purpose of why we do this, is the authentic purpose. Is like, how does this matter? What does it matter that we're doing? And because they really thought that their website saved their trip. Well, our state park did not end up closing, and I tell you, I think those kids still think that their website did it, and I didn't tell them it didn't because they're too sweet. So the next year, it's the Clean Water Project. Kate, if you can find that one. This project was something that started, I didn't know what we were going to do this year because I wanted to do something really different than the year before. And it started, it was such a random event that happened. This student of mine was at the faucet and just letting it run and run and run and run. And another student said, you know, buddy, we're from California. You can't let the water run. There's a drought, you know. And he said it's no big deal, and I said, you guys, you take your water for advantage. Do you know where you get? Do you know not everyone gets their water from the tap? And they looked at me like they don't. And I thought, oh my gosh, we're doing a water project. So from there, I just started off with I need to educate them. Now I love Readers and Writers Workshop. It's one of my favorites. So Kate, if you can go to the research resources down on the right. And we went and I found as many books as I could, and I divided kids up and I gave them choices to find their own books and articles, and we just started reading and reading and reading and talking as a class, and we workshopped all of these books. And behind each of these, you can explore all of this later, they wrote their summaries of what they thought the books were about. And you know, I have to be honest, their reviews were terrible. Their writing is really bad. And I'm reflecting on that now, looking back at this today. This was the first project we did on this project-based learning activity. And I'm okay with posting that because as the project went on, their comprehension about where people get their water is even just became even better. So Kate, across the top, if you click water surveys, that'll take us to the next part because they were really curious about where do people get their water from. And I said, well, what else are you curious about? I said, you know, do you think everyone has a washing machine and a dishwasher? And they're like, they had never considered, you know, you don't have a washing machine? How do you wash your clothes? Oh, this is Pleasanton. They were, so they all got into groups and they created these surveys. And we decided to make Google surveys. And guess what? You know, again, I had no structure to this project. I had no idea it was going to go this route. And as a matter of fact, the learning outcome from this was how to write a good survey question. Because the number one question kids would write when they first did their first draft survey, do you drink water? Do you like water? Like, oh my gosh, you guys, you cannot send that survey. You can't send that out. So down at the bottom, within 24 hours, you can see we had so many responses from all over the world. And every day they would come in and check the spreadsheet about who's answered our survey. I mean, they just couldn't believe people around the world were from really obscure places they hadn't heard of, which they were then using maps to learn about the places they were getting responses from. We're telling them, now I don't have a washing machine. I don't have a dishwasher. We walk to get our water. No, I do not trust well, no one said they walk to get their water. That, you know, we don't trust the water we drink. We filter it. It was interesting. A whole group of school kids in Scotland had answered it. And the boys were so interested in that. They researched even the school. It led to so many other curiosities. And I think project-based learning that's one of my goals with it. I want to inspire thinking and I want to inspire curiosity. And I can't control that with a set, you know, syllabus of assignments. I just get excited when it happens. And because I'm not leading the discussion or lecturing, I'm walking around and listening to kids. I'm just prodding that curiosity on and saying, well, what are we going to do about it? We have to do something. And you know, on this one, no one was coming up with an idea. They just weren't getting to the final, how are we going to end this? And I really wanted to guide it. I thought, oh, we're going to raise money and we're going to build a well. That's what we're going to do. And, you know, teacher trying to control it. It was so hard for me to back off and let them drive it. And we got this article, Kate, it's bottled versus tap across the top. And this changed everything. I found this article and I thought, well, I'll give them this article. And at this point, they're like, this is what we're going to do. We are going to have a water taste test at school because I think people are using and wasting bottles and plastic, and that's causing way more damage. This is an issue that is happening in our town. So they set up, it was an Earth Day event at school, and they set the whole thing up. I just started to assign jobs instead of, some of those people who hold back in the classroom and let everyone else do the work. I'd go up to them and I would say, oh, I want you to be the chief investigator of ... and you're in charge of this. Or I'd give them my expensive camera and I say, all right, you're going to document the whole day and you're going to build a documentary at the end of it. They're like, okay, the quiet ones. They took such responsibility. We had it's a blind taste test. We use Fiji water and Crystal Geyser water and tap water. And then we had an exit poll, and the kids had a Google form again. We had exit interviews that they took responses from people. And come to find out, I think it's at the very bottom. It is. The responses are at the very bottom. Kate, you were waiting to not show that, huh?
I was.
Look at that survey. It was so close with bottled water. I won't even tell you which is which. That people were like, wow, our tap water, we could be drinking that and putting it into containers instead of using bottles. And they chose the Earth Day event at school to do this. And everyone was, participating at our school, and it kind of changed a lot of things. It was a great activity. I ended up loving that project probably the most. The site has many more things. We had the mayor come in. We learned where our own water comes from. There's a ton to explore. Kate, and then the last one is the stop motion, and then I'll stop talking. This one is really different. Again, I was hoping to do more of bringing in the writer's workshop for this one. And I was getting into writing fables, and the kids were like begging to do claymation. And even a student brought in all the clay, and I thought, okay, fine, we'll do it. Except for I don't know how to do claymation. And I really didn't want to lecture or drive this one. And so I just made a website. I keep calling them hyperdocs, but this one I had to package on a website. And it has part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. And the only guiding I did was I kind of kept them on track. All right, guys, we're working on part 1, and I'd give them a little intro to this. And it was a lot of blended learning, watch the mentor video, and we would watch it for all these different purposes. This is at the end. They actually displayed them in that diorama. We talked about rehearsal and how to go through it, but you should see the classroom. The classroom had very little to do with this website. The classroom they were on their own to do this, and it was so much about pre-writing and storyboarding and getting that approved before there was any filming going on. I didn't know what apps to use, what products to use. The kids figured it out. They came to me because I kept saying, I don't know what to use. And that's very freeing, actually. It was scary, very scary, but it was very freeing because it really made them figure it out. And to me, that is the point of a project-based learning, is they are problem solving. And they are so empowered by that and so proud of their products. So then we got to film editing, and I was just barely like one step ahead of them. Their final products are on that front page. You can watch them. One of them ended up, for that authentic purpose, I sent them in to the California Media Festival, and the one that is highlighted at the top with that little green guy, he ended up winning the media festival for stop motion stories, and so it was pretty empowering. So that's a quick 3-year span.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. great examples. Really, they can see, I feel like, how it is used in the classroom. A couple of questions. I think one of the biggest questions that someone has posted again is how do you balance? And Lisa, you hit on this a little bit at the end there, but how do you balance between the specific skills that students need to learn, and the content that they need to learn, and then letting the students just kind of drive? So how do you balance between those two things?
Kate, you want me to go first on that?
Yeah, you go first. Go ahead.
So what I did was I knew what I needed to accomplish with the time that I was using with the projects, and so I would insert that as a part of it. So it was whether it was the research or getting in that writing element. But you know, I was observing them while they're going through it and seeing what skills still needed to be interjected. You know, I like the application of standards-based skills, and so I would search for those, and then earlier in the day, that would be my mini lesson for the day. And then I'd say, I expect you to apply this later today. Because I was not lecturing or teaching all the time, I was able to observe what was ready for the next day. Like, oh gosh, they do not know how to write a survey question. That's a lesson for tomorrow.
I think I'm kind of the same way, although I guess looking back, that's what I did, but I thought I was front loading. So I would have my students, we did regular content Monday through Thursday, and then on Fridays was our project day, which was wonderful because, you know, having different periods throughout the day, every Friday they were all, you know, all my classes were doing their PBL project. But on that Friday, I would know what I was going to ask them to do that was a little different. So I knew they were doing research, and so during that day for the research, they were collecting URLs. And then the very next week during the research part, not only were they collecting URLs, but I was asking them to cite them in MLA format. So there was just a little bit more that I was adding to it each week that they really didn't even know was happening. It kind of snuck it in. But they were things I knew that I needed to target. And I think Lisa and I had this conversation where she was thinking about, what do they know now, and, you know, what do I need to fill in? And I kept thinking, what do I need them to know? So I think both ways work well. I like Lisa's way better than mine. You know, to just look at what they know and be happy with what they know, and then fill in what they need to know, rather than always thinking, oh my God, they need to know this type of thing. So it was a little different.
Lisa, I'd love to hear also, so Kate was sharing that she had her Fridays set up as kind of her project day. Did you, in an elementary classroom, did it look a little different, spending a little time each day, or did you guys take a day to really work on that?
It was worked around like my I had prep periods, so I had to make sure I had chunks of time because it was really hard to clean kids up and move on, especially with Clay that year. So I would look for like 2-hour chunks of time. And so it might be after lunch on Thursday, Friday, might be our day. It was not every day. When it came down to production time, I did do it every day, you know, and they knew we're producing this video. I'm going to give you a week. That didn't happen. It took like 2 weeks. But they, you know, I set that time apart. And so I'm like, all morning I was just writing them off. We have business to get done. We have work to get done, so you can produce your videos in the afternoon. So yeah, I tried to give maybe 2-hour chunks twice a week.
I think also, you know, you and I were talking about it too, Lisa, that like one of the questions was, how do you fit everything in? And you don't. You know, I mean, there are things that get dropped. One of my teachers was so devastated that Moby Dick had to be dropped from the curriculum. And I was like, hey, no offense to Moby Dick fans, but things have to get dropped, you know. And so, but the reward is that they dig in deeper and they learn so much more. It's not this surface. Okay, now you know 6 novels. It's now you know 3, but you also know how to read them well. And that those skills that you're teaching when you dig deep can be applied in so many other ways when you're teaching on the surface and trying to get through, you know, all of your content. You're not teaching those skills, and they can't apply them to other situations. And I think social studies teachers honestly have the worst luck. I think they're the ones that are the most, at least in secondary, they're the ones that are the most pressured, because they have to get to World War II for the next teacher to be able to continue, for that student to be successful. But but I think they get dropped in order to be able to dig in deep. And so, you know, by taking a day every week and turning it into something where they were learning how to truly research and get deep, I didn't get to teach one of my books. So that's just kind of what happened.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I would love to have you guys end with maybe just one piece of advice, one motivation, one reason that people should make project-based learning a priority.
I think you should make it a priority because it gives you time to sit with your kids and connect with them and get to know them, and it becomes an activity that they will always remember about your class. It's something that when you ask them years later, do you remember what we did in 5th grade? And they will always go back to that project. It is, that's what I want them to remember, and to be, you know, make them curious, give them opportunities for curiosity and exploration.
Mm-hmm. I agree. You know, when you become a 12th grade teacher and all of your students on the first day are just sitting at you waiting for you to give them answers, the whole key is realizing that you've got to get to somehow find that nugget of curiosity that's been, you know, buried inside of them forever. And so getting to know them and learning how to bring that curiosity out again so they start thinking outside the box rather than being contained into this box that I think so many students for so long have been put into is huge. And when you see them for the first time without you prompting them, think of something that is different, that you didn't expect, it is so rewarding at the end.
And just to add something, Lisa said about her not being an expert in claymation, that's one of the things, right? Because if all the students are working in all kinds of different projects, you don't have to be the expert in every subject. So, you know, let them look for the answers and make mistakes, and you can guide them, but you don't have to be the expert. So taking your shield down and having them know that nobody is the expert, but you're all looking for answers together. So
that's so true. I think being able to say "I don't know" in front of a class is the 3 most freeing words that you could ever say. And when you're able to say that, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome. Well, I guess we should end with that. You're not going to know everything. Go for it. Dig in. Have fun. So thank you, everybody who is watching. I know it was early in the morning for some people, late at night for others. And if you didn't get a chance, hopefully you get to watch the recording. And thanks for watching. And Lisa and Kate, thank you guys so much for your time and sharing your expertise in this area as well.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.